A lot to talk about. First, new information from a purported whistleblower suggests that Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted of helping Jeffrey Epstein traffic underage girls, may be trying to cut her 20-year prison sentence short. A source also alleges she's receiving VIP-style treatment behind bars, from customized meals to private visits, even a service puppy. And now the story has just shifted even further. A House committee has just released never-before-seen emails from Epstein's estate that for the first time directly mention President Trump, shedding new light on the world Maxwell was operating in and the powerful figures that may be connected to Epstein.
You can feel once more that change in the air when something underground begins to push its way back into the air. Never confirmed, never verified, never theatrically packaged to suit the evening news. Just scraps, and leakages, and whispers, and screenshots and clip, file names, archives that were never intended to be transferred out of locked rooms. And now we are back here again, and the internet is glowing as though somebody has kicked a vault door that has been closed years and years.
At the center of one of the darkest scandals in modern American history, Ghislaine Maxwell, the person convicted for helping Jeffrey Epstein traffic and abuse underage girls. And now she might be trying to walk her way out of a 20-year prison sentence. And the real question is, could it work? Will she be a free woman? The House Judiciary Committee claims that a whistleblower has now provided information and documents suggesting that Ghislaine Maxwell is preparing a commutation request, a formal plea for President Donald Trump to cut her sentence short. And according to the committee, these same sources indicate she could be receiving extraordinary help from inside the prison itself, even from the warden. We're talking about alleged customized meals, private visits, a service puppy. Apparently, according to this whistleblower, one prison official reportedly remarked he was, quote, sick of having to be Maxwell's. You get the idea. So, what is going on here? Would the Trump administration even consider this? And after everything we know about Epstein, the victims, the cover-ups, could Ghislaine Maxwell actually have her sentence commuted? Could she be released from prison? And who is this supposed whistleblower? These are the questions. These are the questions that we have. And we're going to try to dig into a lot of this on this episode of Sidebar. And we got an expert, by the way, who's going to join us in a moment to help unpack this. But first, before we even get to Ghislaine Maxwell herself, there is new information that could change everything, that could change the backdrop of all of this. Earlier this morning, the House Oversight Committee released a series of never-before-seen emails appearing to be from Jeffrey Epstein's own correspondence, messages that for the first time directly reference President Trump in connection with Epstein, and more specifically, his circle after his 2008 plea deal. Now, this is straight from the committee's own press release that was sent out earlier today. In one of those emails, dated 2011, Epstein appears to tell Ghislaine Maxwell, quote, I want you to realize that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. And Maxwell appears to answer, I have been thinking about that. In another, dated 2019, Epstein appears to be writing to author Michael Wolff saying, quote, victim Mar-a-Lago. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff that's redacted. And it goes on to say, quote, Trump said he asked me to resign, never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. And a third, this one appears to be from 2015, appears to show Epstein and Wolff discussing whether they could, quote, craft an answer for Trump ahead of a CNN interview. Wolff responds, if he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime. Now, of course, those emails don't necessarily involve Ghislaine Maxwell directly. I mean, there seems to be some response, but they set the stage for the world that she's operating in right now, the powerful figures that may be connected to Epstein that surround her story, not necessarily saying they're part of anything that she was convicted of, but this is interesting. And with that in mind, I want to refocus on Maxwell herself and what is happening behind bars. Because Maxwell, this British socialite, this longtime companion, this co-conspirator of Jeffrey Epstein, was convicted back in 2021 on multiple federal charges, including sex trafficking minors for Epstein's purported operation. And she was sentenced
This eruption contrasts with the one in the past due to the visual aspect. Screenshots are quicker than transcripts. Clips are viral compared to court briefs. The outrage is condensed into seconds by visual media. It eliminates the time taken to go through lengthy reports. The shockwaves are increased by that acceleration. However, there is another aspect that people fail to realize, which is the psychological need to resolve. Societies grapple with scandals that have been left unfinished. They want clean endings, definitive exposure, definitive accountability. It is a reopening of that psychological wound when there is supposedly new content. You are witnessing the collision of two parallel forces, one who wants exposure at all costs, and the other pressing containment at all costs. The truth lies between them, under the clatter and conjecture, the partisanization of truth and interests, in the opportunistic distortion of the truth. And falsehoods just drown these times. Man-made clips, altered images, images made by AI-generated content, all this to add to the...
To 20 years in prison. A jury found that over the course of years, she helped Epstein recruit and groom teenage girls, some as young as 14, for sexual abuse. Her conviction was upheld. It was upheld all the way through appeal. In fact, just last month, the Supreme Court refused to even hear her case. Now, you would think that that would be the end of her story, right? Maxwell behind bars, serving her time, except it isn't. It doesn't appear that that is what is going on, because what is now coming out from a supposed whistleblower is throwing yet another twist into this case. Now, you will remember that back in July, the Justice Department's Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, sat down with Maxwell for what turned out to be a 2-day interview. And Blanche, by the way, also happens to be Donald Trump's former personal defense attorney. In that interview, Maxwell appeared to praise Donald Trump at certain points. She said he, quote, was always very cordial and, quote, very kind to me, and that she admired his, quote, extraordinary achievement in becoming president, and most notably, she denied ever seeing Trump act inappropriately in any setting connected to Jeffrey Epstein. She also claimed that she'd never seen Epstein, or any man for that matter, do anything inappropriate with women of any age, statements that the committee says are not true. 1 week later, after that interview, or just about, Maxwell was quietly transferred out of a Florida low-security prison into what's been described as a, quote, plum minimum security federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas. That transfer has raised a lot of eyebrows. Why? Because under the Bureau of Prisons policy, sex offenders aren't supposed to be housed in these minimum security camps, right? Maxwell has been, and that came very, very fast. Why? Back in August, the House Judiciary Committee, led by Representative Jamie Raskin, wrote to the Department of Justice and the Bureau of Prisons demanding answers about why and how that move was approved. You fast forward to now, those questions have exploded into something much bigger. This week, the committee says that it received whistleblower evidence and internal documents about Maxwell's treatment inside of that Texas prison, and about something even more shocking, her apparent push for a commutation of her 20-year sentence from President Donald Trump himself. In other words, could she be released from federal prison? Now, among the materials that the committee says it has are emails purportedly written by Maxwell, including one to her attorney, with the subject line, commutation application. In that email that was reported on by Politico, she admits she's, quote, struggling to keep it all together because, quote, there are so many attachments. Now, we ourselves haven't seen those emails, though these are documents that the House Judiciary Committee says it physically has. But all of that, the prison treatment, the transfer, this new commutation application, it appears to be part of what Raskin is calling essentially a quid pro quo arrangement between Maxwell and the Trump administration. Let's talk about it. So to help me break all this down, and there is a lot to break down, I want to welcome back on special guests. We got former federal prosecutor, criminal defense attorney Gene Rossi, who I always love seeing. Gene, thank you so much for coming on. I got to start with what dropped this morning from the House Oversight Committee. It was literally right before we started this. So this is the first time that I think Congress has ever released Epstein's own apparent correspondence that directly or seemingly directly mentions President Donald Trump. So you have one message from 2011 that has Epstein seemingly writing to Ghislaine Maxwell that, quote, the dog that hasn't barked is Trump, saying a victim spent hours at his house with him. You have another from 2019 that says flat out, quote, Trump knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine
Waters. That confusion is the most ironical insurances against real evidence presumed. Since uncertainty is generalized, human beings lose faith in everything. Nevertheless, the fact that these file rumors keep on persisting exposes something more, which is the feeling that the whole story was never told, that classified documents, closed archives and confidential materials remain beyond the reach of the people. It is that belief that destroys institutional credibility year after year. The narrative closure is the basis of power. The populace is relying on the completeness of narratives. When the two do not coincide, explosions such as this one are bound to happen. You can feel that the hand that is really trembling systems is not a single so-called video. It is the pressure of years of unanswered questions hitting the contemporary culture of leak. In the era of the digital world, nothing remains hidden indefinitely. Someone always has a copy, someone always has access. And when the thought of hidden footage enters the consciousness of the population, it does not
need to stop. So Gene, okay, when we're talking about, is Ghislaine Maxwell getting special treatment? Is she asking for her sentence to be commuted? When you read that, what do you take away from it? Because you also have to wonder, are Epstein and Maxwell reliable narrators?
Well, what those emails that you're talking about show to me is this. When Ghislaine Maxwell met with the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Todd Blanche, the second in command, those emails suggest to me that she lied to him and that there was information that called into question the character of Donald Trump in 2011 or 2009. And that would trouble me greatly if those emails are as you say they are, because that goes to her credibility and it makes Todd Blanche look like a fool.
Do those emails carry any legal weight, either for the president? Could they open up investigative threads, new subpoenas? Because it is new information.
Well, because of the statute of limitations, you may have a problem there, but absolutely those emails could help investigative leads. They could help approaching her to find out what the real story is. If she meets with FBI agents or prosecutors in the future, and she's confronted with those emails, she has a fork in the road. She can continue to lie, allegedly, or she can tell the truth. And I think the reason she was transferred to this cushy prison in Texas is stating the obvious. She gave them what they wanted. She gave the Deputy Attorney General Blanche what he wanted, what Trump wanted, and that is he was a choir boy, he was an Eagle Scout, and he never acted more than honorably. Those emails hurt the narrative that they're trying to portray, that Mr. Trump is above the fray, and he didn't know about it, he wasn't involved, he wouldn't have approved it. Those emails, as you read them to me, I haven't seen them.
Yeah.
Pretty darn devastating.
Well, here's the other thing I was wondering. When Epstein allegedly writes about Trump having, quote, spent hours with an apparent victim, what would investigators do to corroborate that, to maybe disprove that? Are we talking phone logs, flight manifests, witness interviews? How do we know this isn't just a statement that he made, maybe to insulate himself in a way?
Well, for the FBI investigators and also congressional investigators, you would try to find a victim that they're talking about. And the first person I would go to find that name is Ghislaine Maxwell, because the name is probably something she's remembered or she's made a log of or has some recollection. That's point number one. Point number two, you can't go to the President of the United States. You would have a motion to quash. You have all kinds of separation of powers issue. But you can go to the people who may know the victim, who may have received information from the victim at the time it was occurring to corroborate her testimony. But the difficulty here, Jesse, is it's so many years back. We're talking 2011. It may be difficult to get good recollection about what happened. But the victim, if you find that victim or can identify that victim and she is willing to talk, that would be very explosive for any leads.
And then there's this third email where Jeffrey Epstein and Michael
not go away. The imagination remains even when proved false. Human beings begin to ask themselves the question, what is there besides? What else was sealed? What other never saw the daylight? As soon as that alert sounds, as soon as people realize that it may not be a complete record, the shockwaves will travel much further than one person. They are disseminated in trust itself. And faith, being lost, is the most difficult to recluse in a vault. It is not the clarity that is exploding, it's coming from uncertainty, since uncertainty speaks louder than facts. As soon as people learn that there can be new material, particularly footage, all the things become different. Documents can be debated, statements can be denied, but even the possibility of unseen video immediately increases the stakes. It triggers imagination, it triggers fear, it provokes damage control even before anything is ascertained to be real. And what is fascinating is the rate with which the ecosystem responds. Narratives begin to be created before anyone.
Wolf are allegedly strategizing about how to, quote, craft an answer for Donald Trump ahead of a CNN interview, where Wolf even appears to say if Trump lies about visiting Epstein's homes or planes, Epstein gains, quote, valuable PR and political currency. What does that correspondence suggest to you?
These Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, beginning in the 90s, were two rising billionaires. And rising billionaires like to stay together. They like to hang together. You got videos of them at a party, yucking it up, telling jokes. They are good friends from the 90s. And you fast forward to 2011, they didn't just stop the relationship, as Mr. Trump suggested. They continued it. And whether there's an attraction to each other's money, or they think that each other can help the other get more power, they had a symbiotic relationship. They were both billionaires. That alone suggests to me that Donald Trump is more involved, has to be proven, was more involved in the affairs of Jeffrey Epstein than President Trump wants to let on. And those emails support that argument.
Before we get into Maxwell, because I want to focus on her, bottom line, what do you think the implications of these emails are for the DOJ? Does this push them to release the broader Epstein files? Do you expect this maybe to just stay in the political lane, not the investigative lane, not a prosecutorial lane? What is going to be the effect of this?
All right, I used to work on the fourth floor of Main Justice at 9th and Pennsylvania Avenue in D.C. And I could tell you this, these emails, now that they're out, are causing a lot of agita amongst the Attorney General and especially Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General. Those emails make his meeting with her seem very questionable. In fact, they kind of shed light on his judgment and the judgment of the Attorney General when he met with them. The second thing is DOJ going to do anything, follow up on these leads? Of course not. They're too busy on retribution against Comey, against Letitia James, Adam Schiff, and God knows how many other political opponents. So they're not going to do anything with this. The only way we're going to get some action is if the chambers of the Congress change hands, either the House and or the Senate. And at that point, beginning in January of 2027, you're going to see congressional hearings where these witnesses, these emails, and all the things in that file are probably going to be disclosed. And the person leading that charge will be former American University law professor Jamie Raskin. That's where I went to law school. He's a pit bull, and he's going to hold hearings, and you're going to get to the bottom of this. Because I can say this, the reason the DOJ, the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, and all those folks at Main Justice, and the reason the White House, including President Trump, are very leery of releasing the entire file is simple. Donald Trump's name's in the file, and it's probably not in a very flattering light. And these emails support that argument.
I want to go back to Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay, first of all,
one has time to confirm one frame. There are those who are quick to dismiss it all as being fake. Others are quick to pronounce all these as evidence. Yet both responses are of the same order, that where the fraction can be real, it still will have its consequences affecting far more than an individual, or a group of individuals. due to the fact that this situation was never alone. It was always about networks, access, protection, influence, the type of ambience in which influential individuals were able to travel with the belief that privacy was here to stay and that what was written will never see the light of day. The supposed revelation of the secret video recording squarely contradicts that premise. You can see reputations being hit in real time, not by the mere assertions but by the less apparent cues. Media packaging, outrage by choice, change of subject. The initial reaction to pressure is not transparency, it's containment. Control the headlines, control the tone, manage the seriousness of the masses on what is being born. And the mass response.
Let's talk about requests to commute a sentence. Can you walk us through what the process is for a commutation application request? I guess a defendant or their legal counsel submits it, who reviews it, what role does the president play? And by the way, how is that different than a pardon?
That's a great question. Let me tell you what it was like before President Trump took office. There used to be a pardon attorney in his second term. There used to be in the Department of Justice a pardon attorney. Okay, I think her name was Liz Boyer. She got fired, basically. And the pardon attorney would accept applications, either online or through the mail, of either a pardon or a commutation. And that pardon attorney would review the application and make recommendations to not only the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, but then to the White House. And it used to go through a very formal process. You didn't need to pay people to get it. You didn't have to have the highest contacts. Today, that pardon attorney has been eliminated. Now let's talk about the difference between a pardon and a commutation. A pardon is this: I am convicted and I'm sent to jail for 20 years. Or I have been charged and I'm awaiting trial, or I'm being investigated and possibly investigated, and there could be criminal hurdles in the horizon. A pardon says you are now erased of all those legal burdens, whether you're a target, whether you're waiting trial, or you've been convicted, so that your conviction or potential conviction will go away. Hunter Biden got pardoned. Many people got pardoned. So when you apply for jobs, it's not on your record. You're absolved. The difference between a pardon and a commutation is this: I'm sentenced to 20 years. I've served 8. I have 12 more to go. A commutation says, Mr. Rossi, you only have to serve 8. You can pack up your bags and leave the prison. Your sentence has been commuted. Time served. The other 12 of those 20 years, forget about it. That's a commutation.
By the way, I wanted to ask you this. The bombshell that she was communicating with her attorney about this commutation request, isn't that privileged? I mean, shouldn't that not even be part of the conversation? Shouldn't that not even be considered right now by the committee, or am I wrong about that?
Well, if the email was absconded or stolen, if you will, and it was between her attorney and Ghislaine Maxwell, then she has a cause of action against the person who absconded with that, whether it's a public official, a reporter, or somebody else. However, it could have been an email that was inadvertently given to a third party, which takes it out of privilege if it's released to a third party. I don't know the circumstances of how they got that email.
Okay, that's fair. Let me ask you about this, talking about how the process works. So according to the committee, they're alleging that, and this is, based on whistleblower information, that the warden at the Bryan Federal Prison is directly helping Maxwell.
Is no less telling. It is anger, of course, but tiredness. Individuals are no longer as appalled as they once were. It is rather a dark realization, similar to hearing thunder and knowing that the storm that everybody had been talking of has arrived. Such an emotional turn is important, however, as it suggests that trust was already broken way before these so-called files were rediscovered. It is the footage angle that makes everything worse, since tape suggests the images that are frozen, things that cannot be taken back or explained. When this material exists, It is to be found as raw reality, settings, relationships, intimacy, action, the sort of surrounding that is hardly ever fully reflected in written reports. That is why the alleged is carrying so much heavy lifting at the present moment. It is the line between conjectures and affirmation. However, history demonstrates that even the imputations, even the ones bound to the secret archives, can lead to changes in people's worldview forever. Courtroom evidence is not necessary to change trust. You simply require plausibility and secrecy. Observe the speed at which the
Mar-a-Lago. Talking presidents. You know who else is featured in these photos? Former President Bill Clinton. It's a photo from what appears to be years ago, possibly the 90s, featuring Clinton alongside Epstein, alongside Ghislaine Maxwell, and musician Jimmy Buffett and his wife Jane Slagsvold. Clinton, too, is no stranger to being connected to the Epstein scandal. Vanity Fair had published a photo of him seemingly on Epstein's jet back in 2002. There was another photo of Epstein and Maxwell with then President Clinton back in 1993 at a White House event. It's reportedly in the archives at the Clinton Presidential Library. Clinton himself has confirmed that he was an associate of Epstein, but to be clear, he has always denied any knowledge of Epstein's criminal activity. In fact, there is a 2019 statement explaining how his Secret Service always accompanied him on trips that he took with Epstein. By the way, Clinton has never been criminally charged or officially implicated in any wrongdoing. And by the way, it was last year when these Epstein files were released that Johanna Schoberg, an Epstein accuser, claimed that Epstein told her Clinton, quote, likes them young, referring to girls. It was reported that Clinton traveled on Epstein's plane for what was described as humanitarian trips to Africa in the early 2000s after he left office. So again, seeing this photo, not a surprise. Okay, let me move on to, I just gotta say it, the creepy ones. Yeah, the creepy ones. Photo of Jeffrey Epstein in the bathtub. Stuff of nightmares. Don't know who took that or when. Kind of reminds me of all of those photos that were released of Epstein from his 50th birthday scrapbook, which we went over in a previous sidebar. Then we got this weird selfie of Epstein with what appears to be his lip swollen up. It's weird. Don't know what that's about. Honestly, not sure I even want to. Obviously don't know if he took that, someone else did. Then I gotta be kind of careful about this. We have photos of what appear to be sex objects. Again, gotta be careful on what we show here, how I describe it. A jawbreaker gag with warning instructions. Someone wearing a black glove with ribbed fingers. You have another photo of BDSM material with rope and a shibari book, an extreme restraints catalog. Just all very unsettling considering we're talking about the guy who pled guilty back in the day in Florida to procuring a person under 18 for prostitution and solicitation. He was registered as a sex offender. He was subsequently arrested in 2019 for sex trafficking of minors before he died in his jail cell. So to see all this, unsettling. Yeah, unsettling to say the least. Now, there was another figure that has come out in these released photos that we got to talk about. Steve Bannon, former White House advisor. You have one photo of Bannon and Epstein together, sitting opposite each other with a big desk in between. You actually can see what appears to be a framed photo of a woman lying down. Back to Michael Wolff. He said about this photo in that Daily Beast podcast, this is an Epstein study. The study is on the second floor of that mammoth townhouse, what people say might be the largest private residence in Manhattan. Actually, Epstein said this, I'm not sure it's exactly true, but it's certainly up there. So this would be if you were creating a Jeffrey Epstein kind of diabolical character in the movies. This is the room that the set designer would create for that character. You have another photo of Bannon and Epstein taking a photo together in the mirror. Got another photo of Bannon talking with director Woody Allen, who we're going to discuss more in a minute. Another photo of Bannon with socialist activist, philosopher Noam Chomsky, who reportedly was in regular contact with Epstein over the years. But with Bannon, this is, again, not surprising either, since we reported recently in a previous Epstein materials release all of these communications to and from Epstein that were published, including a June 2019 email, so this is right after a photo was taken of Trump shaking hands with Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew, during a state
discussion is derailed. Rather than systemic accountability, the discourses turn into tribal warfare. Individuals choose sides, advance agendas, assault motives. Separatism is the fog which clouds structure questions. Who enabled what? Who ignored warning signs? Who benefited from silence? Since, in case the discussion remained cool and critical, it was bound to grow out. And it would not end with a single character and a clip. It would begin to look at whole social and political ecosystems, the protection of behavior by influence, the insulating effect of wealth, the immunity of access. And that's the real shockwave, not one frame of film, but the message that there are still invisible levels, that whatever the masses got over the years could be biased, edited, filtered by legal and institutional filtering. You can observe institutions in training their language, such terms as unverified, out of context, digitally manipulated. There are a few of those warnings that make some sense. There is a bombardment of fabrications on the internet. However, the vehemence of anticipatory rejection is occasionally a sign of a phobia more profound than mere fact-checking. Since footage, upon authentication, is not subject to interpretation, it puts the viewers into the room. It eliminates story intermediaries, and mediation is the way of power. They like attorneys, message men, transcripts that have been edited, smoothing agents. A second stratum to this outburst is time. Leaks don't surface randomly, they manifest themselves in the presence of leverage politically, legally, culturally. Timing determines impact. The same content published under another climate could be flattened. Released now, it detonates. Fear can be traced almost in terms of behavioral patterns, allies going silent, donning the cloak of commentators. Although nothing new is proven beyond doubt, the revival causes a re-emergence of unresolved questions, things that did not have a satisfactory resolution, issues that remained unresolved since official investigations were never satisfactory to most observers.